Welcome to Hello Self. It's a podcast focused on turning your can'ts into cans and your dreams into plans. I am your host, coach, and author, Patricia Leonard. Thank you for tuning in today because you remember the mission is to turn your can'ts into cans and your dreams into plans. And we hope that from the messages you get from our podcast, it'll help you get your dreams and goals off that someday shelf and start living them now. Hello Self is about taking the moment to find out who you are and what you desire in life. And I have a guest today that is going to make you think about who is Hello Self? Who am I? And I'm so excited to have met him. You know, we don't walk into people every day, but somebody who knows us may refer us to somebody else. That may be a Hello Self moment. So always follow up if you get somebody saying, well, you know who you ought to talk to is so-and-so, because you just never know how the Hello Self moments link us to our purpose and mission. So I will give a real brief bio of John Dickerson, my guest today, and then I'll let him tell you the real story of what he does, what he is about, and his own personal mission. So here we go. Get ready. Get your notebook out. John Dickerson began his career with the Ark of South Dakota. He has continued to work on helping people find whatever it is that they want to do in life and to think about it and maybe send us in a direction that helps us start thinking. Our society, a lot of the language has broken down. John will tell you more about that. But he is an advocate for change, and he has been his entire life. And if there's ever a moment that we need to be thinking about change from a global standpoint, as well as a personal standpoint, it is now. So I'm going to turn you over to my guest, and I'm learning as much as any of you will. So keep tuned. John Dickerson, take it from here.
Well, Patricia, thank you so much, and to your guests, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be with you today on the Hello Self podcast.
Yes, we're so glad to have you.
Well, you know, your theme, I started with the ARC, which at that time was called the Association for Retarded Citizens, a term we don't use anymore, in 1973. So I'm starting my 51st year in the field. And this moment of, as you've described in your podcast and your materials about Hello Self, really embodies this whole movement of helping individuals with disabilities and their families discover their gifts. And then how do they turn those gifts? Because we all have gifts. And it's how do we turn those gifts into a life that brings meaning and joy and participation in the community that you choose.
And John, you just reminded me of something before we got started. We all have disabilities, all.
Absolutely. And
of some sort, and we think it's them. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
It is. We all have gifts and we all have things that we're not so good at. Yes. And we all have things that hold us back. Yeah. And some of those disabilities are things we can see in others. Others, we can't see them at all. And so it becomes this moment of, for each of us, that Hello Self moment. When you're seeing somebody, do you make decisions about them? Do you judge them? Or do you just become curious about them? You know, Malcolm Gladwell in his famous book, Blink, said that we make our decisions about people in a fraction of a second. And it's all about our inherent bias that we have. Gee, I have a bias against women who wear hats. or, whatever it might be. Yeah. And so the idea that what we've got to step outside of our moment and just be appreciative. One of our, so I spent these nearly over 5 decades working in the field of disabilities and then started a
Yes.
company. I failed at retirement, just after, 46 years in the field with the ARC, I lost my mind for a bit, ran for public office, didn't win.
Oh,
And it confirmed with me that the greatest thing about the American people is they all really most people live 5 degrees of center, and then what we do is we hear the extremes all the time. But I then started to say, how do we help reach people in a new way? So we formed a company called Quillow, and now Life Course Connected is all about building up that sense of self, that understanding that we all have gifts
yeah.
and we need help along the way to guide us, because sometimes we don't even know what we don't know, right?
No, we don't
And
know what our gifts are. Yes.
yeah. So the idea that how do you explore we have technology that helps people we have a library of over 2,100 short 60-second videos that help you think differently, that they're aimed at families, people with disabilities, the staff that work with them. And one of them, I'll just share with you his theme, which is I think it ties into your theme of hello self. And he's a wonderful psychologist named Mike McCosey. And he said, do you look at people as a math problem that needs to be solved or a sunset that needs to be appreciated?
Oh, wow.
Because if we look at everybody as a math problem, we
Wow.
think about what's wrong with them and what we've got to fix
Yes.
or what we have to change, or do we look at them as a sunset that each one is unique and different, and tomorrow it'll be different again, and we should just appreciate that?
Oh, John, that's a thread that runs through the whole life. Our marriages, our political system, our corporate system. Oh, my goodness. Yes.
Absolutely. And it comes back to this idea that we need to learn to think differently, because how we think influences how we act.
Yes.
How we act then influences all those around us.
Yeah,
You know,
because Stephen
so-
Covey talks about the circles of influence. And so what we're doing is influencing it one way or the other. Yes. Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
And I often credit with my mother sometimes, because I can be confusing, and I contribute that to my mother, because we grew up in a little town in South Dakota. My next door neighbor was Jane, who introduced us to, and we lived on a Lakota reservation,
Oh,
although not being native. My dad had a job working for the tribe in the city, and my mother always told me, since she was Irish Catholic, that the oldest son in Ireland would get the land and the youngest son was given to the church. So I grew up being told I was supposed to be a Catholic priest,
yeah.
which was interesting
Yeah.
because we went to the Presbyterian church.
Oh,
The thing about her marrying a divorced Protestant, she wasn't as welcome in the Catholic Church. But that old story stuck with me all those years. So as we talk about this, if people feel it's a little confusing to talk about everybody having gifts, just take a step back for a moment. Because if we ask ourselves honestly, what are our gifts? What do people appreciate about us? It helps that vision of ourselves and what we're good at. And we don't spend enough time on that with anyone. And it all comes down to the perspective that we take. And I'll share with you a story from growing up on the res. I was working on my bike one day and I dropped a piece in the grass. And I'm looking down at it, can't find it. And one of the older fellows that we lived next door, he looked at me and he said, "Johnny, what is it? What are you looking for?" I said, "I dropped this bolt and I can't find it." And he said, "That's because you're looking at it like a white man. You're looking down at it. go lay down, put your head on the ground, and look like an Indian, and you'll see it sticking up as big as a building. And so, sure enough, I laid down on the ground and looked, and there it was sticking straight up.
Oh
So,
my,
this question of perspective,
yes.
do we look down on things,
Yeah.
or do we get down on the ground with them and look with them of what they're dealing with? And so, as we talk about gifts, when we talk about people finding their gifts, we often with Quillow help tell stories. So, Patty Dye is a famous author that I love, and she has a great line. She said, the shortest distance between two people is a story.
Oh, I believe that. Yes.
And a story links us together. And so as we learn stories, we begin to see who people are as opposed to how we just see them. And so with people with disabilities, we may look at somebody as Down syndrome or uses a wheelchair because they have cerebral palsy, or they have autism and they may act a little different or awkward in social situations. Or it may be a hidden disability we don't understand. But the idea that how do we get to know them and what are their gifts? I'll tell you a quick story. I was leading a group of families and people with disabilities one night, and we were talking about jobs and careers. And how do you find a job that you love?
Mhm.
And this young woman with a disability, she's about 40, mid 40s, I guess, suddenly hopped up and she walked around the table and introduced herself and said, "Hi, my name's Cheryl. What's your name?" And everybody was so pleased to meet her. They all said, she went back and sat down. About 15 minutes later, she popped up again and said, "Hi, my name's Cheryl. What's your name?" And, mom's now nervous. You can imagine now mom's a little nervous.
Who said
And
that?
another 15 minutes ago, she goes by and she pops up again and says, "Hi, my name's Cheryl." And the mom's now ready. She packs up and she's getting ready to leave. And she said, "I apologize. She's ruining the meeting." I said, "No, she's made my meeting." I said, "If we can teach her 3 words, we get her a job tomorrow.
Yeah.
She's got a gift." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "When she asked me for the third time, 'Hi, my name's Cheryl. What's your name?' I wanted to tell her because she was sincere and she didn't get tired of it." And she said, "What do you mean, teach her 3 words?" I said, "Welcome to fill in the blank. My name's Cheryl. What's your name?" Anybody in business would love to have a greeter
That's right.
with that sort of enthusiasm. And she never gets tired of doing it.
No.
The mother came up to me afterwards and said, "My daughter's 47 years old, and nobody has ever suggested before she has a gift." So I think that's tragic. And so we started with her on this idea that she's got a gift. She's got this insatiable desire to meet and be friendly to people. So
You
how
know,
do we,
John, I have to tell a story here. I'm dying to tell it because it
please,
supports exactly what curious. You said curious and finding out who we are and finding how that fits. I was at my chiropractor this past week. And, you can see all of my audience knows that I like to talk a lot. And so there was another patient came up while I was in the waiting room, and the chiropractor came back to his office and or to his front desk, and I was talking to the man that had just walked in, and I said, "So who are you?" Kind of like your, yeah. I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Well, my name's Scott." And I said, "I'm Patricia." So I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Well, Patricia, I was in Florida during the COVID time, and I had run a restaurant for 35 years. And he said it just wasn't working anymore. I had to close it because it was not productive or cost effective." And he said, "But you know what I did? I went on a vacation to South America." And he said, now the chiropractor's listening to all this while he's sitting there at his desk. And he said, "And I met a woman there." And he said, "And I'm going back and we're going to get married and I'm going to move there permanently." So after he walked away, the patient walked away, the chiropractor said to me, "Patricia, You told me more about that man in 5 minutes. I found out more about that man in 5 minutes than I have known, and he's been my patient for 5 years. Can you believe that?
Absolutely.
He said, now
Absolutely.
I know why you have the Hello Self podcast. I'm curious. Yes.
Well, and that it is so important that we understand that, because in the moment, again, there's another great poet that I love, Mary Oliver, and I won't give her justice to this poem,
Yeah.
but she talks about, it's a very short poem, it's 4 lines long. It says, be aware, around you are amazing things. Be prepared to be amazed and then tell others about it. We're in this time when there's so much negative information in the world,
John.
and there's nothing we can do about it. But we can be mindful of what we put out. There's a great book a woman wrote that was really influential as we were starting our company. Her name is Michelle Galeman, and her book is called Broadcasting Happiness. And she's part of the popular psychology movement of Martin Seligman, who wrote a book called Flourish that was also extraordinarily influential to me about how do we help people build this positive mindset. And she, for years, had wanted to be the nightly anchor at the 6 and 11 o'clock news at a major network.
Yeah.
And it makes it. She's at one of the top 10 stations in America. And she comes home to her husband and she said, I absolutely hate this. All we're doing now is putting out toxic information, crime, corruption, fires, death. And it's all about what gets clicks, what gets eyeballs on the news. And he said, well, then quit. She said, I can't quit. I've been aiming for this for 20 years. And he said, but you're miserable. And so she did. She went back and got her PhD. And now she's training and she's doing work about this idea that we can't change what others broadcast. We can only change what we broadcast. And that's part of what we're doing with Quillow and Life Course Connect is how do you broadcast the goodness that you see where you want to go in your life, where you don't want to go, what works for you, what doesn't, where do you need help, where can you make decisions on your own, and you learn from other people, their successes. A young woman in Virginia named Shay Ruff has done videos for us. Shay is a young woman with a disability that was told she'd never go to college. In high school, said, don't even think about it. Well, she not only went to college, but she graduated. And she then had always thought, this is the job I want. And she finally got the job she wanted and needed a college degree. And after 4 months, she realized she hated it. It wasn't what she wanted. And she had to give herself permission to say, this isn't the right fit. I need to try something else. And that found her the right fit. And so we talk about this. We have stories about a young man, happened to be on my feed this morning, who has now been working 32 years for the same company in Connecticut. He's a young man. When he started the job, nobody gave him 30 days. And he's now on 30 years. And he's teaching other people about having a career. We're going to be recording a young couple who happen to have a disability. They've been married 17 years. And I asked him, I said, this is wonderful. What is it? What's the success to your marriage? And she laughed and she said, my husband is really smart. He always makes me feel like I'm right, even when I'm wrong.
Wow. Yes.
And, she said, we don't argue about the little things. And that's the key to any kind of relationship along the way. And so what we do at Quillow and Life Course Connect is all about helping people. And this is what I loved about your theme of turning can'ts into can and turning those dreams into plans. Because, it's like we often use this with folks. If I gave you the news or one of your listeners today and said, you just won the lottery. You got $50,000 and you can take the trip of a lifetime. You can go anywhere in the world. Well, you could do one of two things. You could just hop on the first airplane and start traveling, right? No plans, no nothing. And you may get to where you want to go, you may not. Or you sit down and say, gosh, where is it we really want to see? Where is it we don't want to go? What is it that's important to us? What can we learn from others that have traveled and seen the world? And all of a sudden you start thinking, again, it gets back to this curious. Where are the things that really would make my life joyful?
You know, John, I have this love hate affair with planning, but in my book, in one of my books, I wrote this because I believe that we put plans together. However, with those plans, we have to be flexible because there may be a bridge out. There may be bumpy roads ahead, or there may be, so plans get us started to do
Yes.
something. And then as we move along, oh, I didn't know about that. I want to try that. But as long as we sit in our flip flop lives and just sit there and talk, 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 we may never know. So I love your idea. I'm going to win the lottery and I'm going to travel the world.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%, Patricia, that a plan should be a living, breathing thing that
Yeah.
changes all the time. And that's what we do with Life Course Connect, so that you have conversations. And what we find is so much missing today is the time of a conversation.
Conversation and experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I may think, for example, tell you a story of a young woman. She said, I always wanted to work in a greenhouse. I thought growing plants would be what I'd love to do. And the agency helped her get a job in a greenhouse. And she said, did you know there are bugs and worms in that dirt? I hate that. I don't like getting my hands dirty. But she tried it. And the idea that you could try different things, listening to your bio, you've done so many different things, Patricia. And none of
I don't know what I'm going to do next.
well, that's the beauty of it, right? And why there's some people that like that creativity. There's some people like the guy that worked 30 years for the same drugstore. That makes him joyful.
Yes.
It's finding that out what makes you find that joyful place.
Yes.
We had a conversation with staff in a group home one time that was using Quillow. And the question was, what brings you joy? And people don't get asked that question very much.
Oh, no.
And it should be asked all the time. And one of the people with a disability turned to one of their staff. And they turned it around and said, what brings you joy? And the lady said, what brings me joy is singing in my choir at church on Sunday. And the young man who happened to have Down syndrome said, I'd like to come hear you sing then. You've never sang for us. Well, she said, you need to know, she happened to be Baptist and she happened to be Black. She said, our church service doesn't last an hour. It may go 3.5, 4 hours. That as long as I'm with you, I don't mind. And so the 3 guys in the home went with her to church on Sunday. She came and picked him up, took him to church. Now imagine they're the only white faces in a Black church.
Yes.
They were totally welcome, made at home. She introduced them as friends of hers, not as people she took care of or worked with, just friends of mine. So 2 of them decided that was way too much church and didn't want to go back. The one young man loved it, and he said, could I learn to sing in your choir?
Oh.
They found joy together.
Yes.
By getting to know each other and had a friendship there that transcended their work relationship.
Oh my
and
God.
So that finding out, another time we did this, we were asking people, what's your favorite meal? What's your favorite meal? And this is a group home in Indiana, 2 men living together with a staff person there. And the one guy said, I love sweet potato pie. We always have that at Thanksgiving. And the woman said, well, You don't hear that much up here in the north.
Oh,
And she said, when I'm at home, we always had sweet potato pie at Thanksgiving. They started talking. They realized they both were from Macon, Georgia,
oh my,
and they never shared that with each other.
yes.
So we've got to move beyond this judging people to being curious about them and where can we find these connections? Because I think that's how we cross some political divides. I was riding in an Uber one time in Florida, and the guy looked at me, my hair's a little longer, and he decided, I guess I might be a little liberal. And he said, "You probably don't want to ride in my Uber." I said, "If you get me to the airport safe, I don't care."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, I back a certain candidate, and I bet you don't." And I said, you know, I don't mind that, as long as you don't kick me out of the cab for not
Yeah,
backing your candidate.
right.
And he said, "Well, I thought you guys were all evil." And I said, you need to get to know people. I said, "Do you know my son served 6 years in the United States military?" And I don't think that means that he or I hate the country.
No.
And he said, "Well, I would have never guessed that." And, this is where, again, we don't find out about people. It's like we used to have neighbors. Now, if they have different political philosophies, we don't talk to them anymore.
Yes.
And I think when we break this down around whatever it is, my field is people with disabilities, what is it that brings people joy? It may take 45 minutes. You were so kind. You listened to one of our podcasts about the young man that
Yes.
shared he loves fishing. And on Quillow, you can create a private group to share videos that nobody else sees. And he's, can I have a circle of support around fishing? And I said, sure. And his job coach said, well, why haven't you ever asked us about getting a job around fishing? We keep trying to get you a job in a hotel. And he said, nobody ever asked me before.
I love that.
We have to find ways to ask the important questions of folks, and that takes time. And right now we tend to put such a artificial limit on how much time we
Yeah,
spend.
the next thing, I got to do this. Okay, I got to meet the, I got to go to this meeting. Or, John, the song that keeps running through my mind. And then I want to ask you something about how this fits in corporate America. But a song that keeps getting to know you, getting to know all about you. That keeps, as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh my God, that's the song that just says it all, getting to know all about you. And then I can see you through different eyes, perhaps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is so much in music and that comes across in so many ways. Um, there's a song that is called See Me. And I believe the artist that promotes it is called Lisa James. And it talks about, I'm right in front of you. Can you see me? I'm trying as hard as I can. Are you seeing me? I want you to see me. And I think it's such a great song. And I often talk when I'm talking about professionals and with parents. Another great song is one by the Staple Singers. I'll Take You There. That
Oh, yeah, I love that too.
how do we help people get to where they want to be? How does that young man with a disability talk to the woman that works with him about her joy in life? And
Can you see me? Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, John, you're just bringing up. I had lunch with a young man that I had just met at my TV production, and we met at Panera, and I didn't really know him. I just was at an editing class with him, but we connected, and he said maybe we could have lunch one day. Well, for the
uh-huh.
first hour, John, and I don't know if I mentioned, but he's a young Black man. But at the first hour, he talked about himself for one solid hour. And at the end, he said, Patricia, I have to tell you something. He said, you looked me straight in the eye, just like you were saying, do you know who I am? He said, "You looked me straight in the eye all the time that I was telling my story." He said, "I haven't had an hour to talk about myself for years. I don't know if I ever have." And he said, "To me, that shows self-respect, or that you know who I am and that you care, you respect who I am." Isn't that amazing? It's just the little things, John.
Well,
Can
it
you
is.
see
And
me?
I looked up the artist's name. Her name is Leela Jones, Leela James, Leela James, and the song is called See Me. And I would urge your listeners to listen to it because it's a
Yeah.
powerful song. But this thing about the listening to somebody is so key. And you never know really what impact you're going to have on somebody's life by listening to them. I went home for a high school gathering honoring our wrestling coach in my high school, and we had athletes there from many, many different decades. And this guy who was probably, 8 or 10 years younger than me came up to me and he said, "You probably don't remember this, but I was in the sixth grade coming out for wrestling. I was really little, and these guys were picking on me. And I'm a pretty big guy. I'm about 6'5" and 300 pounds, and wrestled heavyweight all through college. And anyway, apparently I picked him up and put him on my shoulders and said, 'You guys quit picking on him. We need a 95-pound wrestler, just like we need a big wrestler. And this kid's going to do something.'" Now, I don't remember doing that at all. I don't remember doing that at all.
That's okay.
And to this day, he remembers that.
Yes.
And so when we think about whether it's a person, this is our role with Quillow and Life Course Connect, is how do we keep, these memories? And a good friend of mine said to me when he's learning about what we do with Quillow, and he said,
Yes.
"You need to change your mission statement." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "What your company is all about is creating memories. And you want to create memories that are positive, that are empowering, that lead you to turn those can'ts into can." We have a great video these two women in Illinois did for us, and they're just sitting there talking in the video. And the one person, the video is entitled "The Power of Yet." And the one woman says, "I can't do this." And the other one says, "That's not quite true. What you're saying is, I can't do it yet."
Yes. Oh,
Now, think about the power of those two statements.
yes.
The one is, I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep trying.
Yes.
The other is definitive. I can't do it.
Yes.
And if we think we can't do it yet, then I got to figure out another way. And so that's where, as we think about with our company creating memories, the beauty of a plan is that it changes, it moves. A mother with me was talking that she's using our tools in a whole different way. So her son has a disability, and he goes to a behavior coach. And behavior coach is a really good person. And the son says, "I hate these meetings." And the mother says, "Why?" They're driving in their car back from the meeting. "I hate these meetings because all they talk about is every time I screw up. Don't I do anything right?" So she took our Quillow app and she talked with him and said, "You do a lot of things right. How about we create a channel on Quillow that is just for you, our family, your behavior coach, your job coach, and all we're going to do is record you doing things right." He said, "I like that." All of a sudden, he was watching himself doing things well. Now, he has a challenge around lots of people. A group of 5 to him is an unbearable crowd.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, he was seeing himself doing well at church, at work, at the gas station, at the grocery store. And he started watching himself, believing in himself that he could do it. And it changed that whole dynamic of figuring out what he's doing wrong and trying to fix it. And his mother said, he's now believing in himself instead of constantly being critiqued. And that's part of what we want to do is change that dynamic within this environment we call Quillow and Life Course Connect, and just talk about how we flip the script for people and build to that. It's like that was her hello self moment, right?
Yes, yes.
Because she realized we're trying to fix him and it's driving him nuts. Let's embrace the good that he's doing and let's keep building on that.
It's, John, just one short statement as we begin to wrap up. I really believe that words are short anymore, and arts and demonstration, and just like the video you said, letting them see what they can do. Because I am very interested in what's happening in corporate America, because I think that there's so much that needs to be going through another transition. And I challenged that myself when I was in there, but but anyway, in just a short piece as we begin to wrap up, how does this fit in corporate America?
It really, I believe it comes down to leadership
Okay.
and building a culture. I often ask CEOs, how much time of your day do you spend building the culture of your organization? The universal answer is almost not enough. And then they say a couple hours a day.
Yeah, and John, we talk about all the words. We pledge to do this. That doesn't mean a thing.
But painting that on the wall doesn't mean a thing.
No.
And I say to them, every moment of every day, from how you greet the person who's sitting behind the front desk, to talk to your staff, to the memos, to the policy you write, that's how you build the culture of your organization.
Credit, giving others credit, helping them see their talents.
And I think what we are seeing now is, I think I'm always accused of being a hopeless optimist. I think we are moving beyond to seeing that just the only metric is corporate profits, but we have to look at sustainability. How do we sustain our employees? We're at a point in time, it used to be 10 years ago, you had 10 applicants for every job.
Yeah.
Now you have 10 jobs for every applicant. And leadership is going to change how we take care of our employees. How do we look at them? How do we support them? And it's going to be a hard transformation. We are still in corporate America learning what's come out of the pandemic. People don't want to come back and work 80 hours in the office. And how are we going to adjust? And I think that affects everywhere up and down the line, human services, and all of the issues that are out there. Had to deal with the healthcare system recently of just making an appointment. Usually you called your doctor's office, talk to somebody, make an appointment. Now you talk to a hospital switchboard that takes you to nobody that that's going to make a schedule for you.
There is a power shift, isn't there, John? The power went back to the people. I don't want to do that anymore. I interviewed somebody on my Hello Self. It was a doctor, a cardiologist in Memphis. And he said, Patricia, I've been sent to you to help me with my transition. And I said, well, what is it? He said, I'm leaving the medical industry. He said, most of my clients are older and they want more than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And he said, that's the rules we have now. Yeah. But guess what? I coached him and I said, have you told them you're leaving? He said, well, my wife and I are putting a plan together. And I said, when are you going to tell them? And he said, I'm going to tell them in a month. Guess what he did? He told them, and they said, what do you want money-wise? And what do you want as a doctor? And he got everything he wanted. He could spend time with his people. We've got to speak up.
Absolutely. We've got to change. We have to change from inside. We have to keep pushing for change. Yeah. It reminds me of a biography I read of a famous heart surgeon. And this guy's following him around, and he was incredibly impossible to get time with. He's renowned around the world. But every day he stopped and talked to this one man who had worked in the housekeeping department. Yeah. And the guy was curious because he's following him around for a month, catching him and interviewing and writing about him. And so he went up to this older gentleman and said to him, I said, Dr. DeBakey, people around the world would like to get 10 minutes with him. He stops and talks to you every day. What do you do here in the hospital? He said, well, I'm the head of housekeeping for the hospital. And he said, so he spends 20 minutes with you every day. He sees you talking about this. And he said, of course he does, because we're in the same business. We save lives.
Wow.
Because if my people don't keep the room, he can be the greatest heart surgeon in the world.
Yeah.
But if my people don't keep that room spotless, they're going to die. He said the other thing Dr. DeBakey knows is that people talk to their housekeepers. Just like that patient talked to you in the waiting room.
Yes.
They will tell things to the housekeeper they won't tell their doctor. So he empowered the housekeepers to talk to his doctors and nurses and say, gee, Miss Patricia over in room 312, she's not doing as well as she's telling you. She's really worried and scared, because they would talk to that housekeeper in a way that they wouldn't talk to the doctor. So this becomes, you talk about where I think corporate America has to go. We've got to learn to value people. We have to learn from people that are doing the jobs to tell us how to do the jobs better. And we've got to create different metrics of, it's not just corporate profits for the last quarter, but what is truly building our community and building our workforce and the folks that make us successful in a way. And I think that translates down to spending more time being curious and really understanding what brings joy to the people that work in your business or industry.
And you mentioned it with that young lady that said, hi, I'm Patricia Leonard, or I'm so-and-so. Because people, when they come into, whether it's a telephone call or what, or they just walk into a store, they love somebody that says, I'll be with you in a moment, or welcome to Hello Self, or whatever. They want that. It's like a feeling it now. I'm connected. Oh my gosh. John, this is so needed in our society, and I can't wait to get it out there. So we'll put your postings out there about your podcast. Is that okay?
Absolutely. And anybody, our website is myquillow.com and lifeforceconnect.com.
Okay.
And our podcast is called Quillow Pod. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. And we appreciate, Patricia, so much the opportunity to be here on Hello Self. And what you're doing is making such a difference. So please keep it up.
I am so excited to have met you, and I'm so grateful that Jane connected us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We may have more connections, who knows?
That's right.
So to our audience, thank you for hanging in there with John and I as we learn from each other, share with each other. And I just hope, my hope for you is, I call myself a cheerleader for you, and my hope for you is that something in this story helps you turn your can'ts into cans and your dreams into plans. And I want to ask you one thing as we begin to close out. What are you broadcasting for happiness? What are you broadcasting? Are you saying hello to others? Are you giving people a smile? Are you helping them see some of their own capabilities? What are you broadcasting? And as I always say at the end of my show, again, I'm Patricia Leonard, the host of Hello Self. And don't forget, keep dreaming. Thank you for joining Hello Self today, and may it offer insight and inspire you to stay on your runway to success. Like, share, and subscribe. And remember this, keep dreaming.